mindfulness, being aware and present in our daily lives. I'm excited to be with you today and discuss and hopefully demystify what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is becoming kind of a buzzword in education, and it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Um, Often people hear mindfulness and they think of meditation, yoga, being in a Zen state, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Simply stated, however, it just means to be aware and to be present in what we're doing. And so, with our students, it's so powerful that we can help them focus and be in the moment and get the most out of their learning that they can. Basically, when we talk about mindfulness, we're just looking to find balance between our thoughts, our reactions, emotions, and our physical state. As we move forward, it's interesting when we look at mindful or mindful. And in our fast paced world, we can have a million things running through our minds in any given moment. Our minds are full, no doubt about it. And when we practice being mindful, we allow all of those distracting thoughts to take a break as we focus on one thing, and we become aware of all of the distractions, acknowledge them, bring them into our mind and into the present, letting go of all of those distractions to be able to focus on the here and the now. One thing that I really like to do with my students is I like to use a mindful jar or bottle. And what this is, it's just literally water and glitter. And it's a great way to teach them that when we're mindful and we have this, you can use it for a couple of different things, but this is a great introduction. So you take this and you can say, when we have thoughts in our minds, they're always there. They aren't going anywhere. That we're humans. We have very richly scheduled lives, and that's what they do. But when it's full and they're just scattered around in our head, we can't see clearly. But when we allow ourselves to take a breath, to come into the moment, to be present where we are, all of a sudden things become a lot more clear. Those thoughts, they didn't go away. They're there. It's just we're allowing ourselves in that point in time the ability to stop and kind of see clearly. So in making a glitter jar, it's as easy as taking water, any kind of jar or bottle, and adding glitter to it. Mindfulness is the ability to be fully present and aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. It's connected to the neuroplasticity of our brain and how we're able to learn and self-regulate. We're building our biological and neurological capacities when we do mindfulness exercises. It's kind of like mind homeostasis, controlling and regulating itself to cope with the outside forces. More and more research is surfacing to support the idea of how brain responds to mindfulness practices and how relationships benefit and how physical and mental health improves. It's incredible when you stop and think of the power of the mind. So I've attached a couple of research articles, links in our research section for you to take a look at also. I have a video that I'd like to share with you, and I think this just kind of sums it up, why mindfulness is a superpower. It's cute, it's informative for us, but it's also good for our students. So let's take a look.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, You might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower and one that is accessible by you immediately.
I really love that video, and I love the fact that it's, even though he talks about meditation um, as opposed to mindfulness, one thing not to get confused about with mindfulness is this has no religious ideology attached to it. Mindfulness and meditation is just taking a minute to kind of be aware in your own self with your breath, where you are, and just kind of controlling that moment. So I love this quote too. And mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way. One thing I share with my students a lot is to remember that this too shall pass. It gets very overwhelming when you're going through tough times or traumatic events to not think that there's never going to end and there's no way out. But reminding that if we can be in the present and just deal with things as they are, we can move them ahead. If we can be present in the moment, not feeling bad about the past or worrying about the future, we're able to get through those trying times or just focus on the good that's happening right now. And as we move forward, it's important to keep in mind what mindfulness is not. It's not a perfect, quick fix for all of your problems. It's not a religious ideology, as I mentioned. It does not mean that you will always be calm and happy and at peace. What it is, it's about being aware and present in the moment in order to be the best that you can be for yourself and for others. Also, mindfulness is a practice, and it's called that for a reason. This is a judgment-free zone. Just being aware of your desire to wanting to be more present is great. Be kind to yourself. Just keep practicing it, and it will become more natural and easy to do the more you do it. So it's important as you take this to your kids too that you just, one time they're like, I don't want to do it. Don't say, well, that kid's never going to practice mindfulness. It takes a while to break down those barriers and to be open and ready to move forward with that. So our minds are super powerful. And I would like to take a minute, if you'll indulge me, in just a little mind practice. I do this with my students too. If you want to think for just a second, if you could, think of a sour Skittle on your tongue, or a lemon, if you don't know what a sour Skittle is. Imagine it on your tongue. Feel the texture. Experience the shape and the taste. Just let it sit there for a second, like really focusing on that sour Skittle on your tongue. How did you feel? Did anything just happen? Did your mouth start to salivate? You just caused a physical response to a mental thought. Isn't that crazy? I know, every time I do that, my mouth is watering now just walking through this practice, and I've done this hundreds of times. That's the power of our brain and thoughts, and why stress and worry and anxiety can cause some pretty crazy physiological responses. So Remembering that our body is always in the present with movements, sensations, and reactions to daily stimulus. When we don't pay attention to the mind body connections, we are more likely to experience physical and emotional problems. And these are just a few of the things that can result from stress that you're seeing here. And according to Dr. Lucy Vasuto, she is from the Orange County Department of Ed, stress is between our ears. It's something we create through our reaction to what is happening. So if we empower ourselves with the tools and we empower our students to identify and deal with stress, we can hopefully lessen or eliminate some of these signs. Taking a look at those, have you ever experienced headaches, lower back pain, that shoulder and neck when your shoulders are up around your ears, heart palpitations, nausea, getting colds and flu easily? And then what about some of the cognitive or emotional signs of stress? Forgetting things, having a hard time concentrating, anxious thoughts, constant worrying about everything in your life, moodiness, feeling overwhelmed. I'm sure at some point we all can connect to those stressors and those reactants of what we have. So some of the benefits of mindfulness that I'd like to share with you is, number one, remembering that our brain is a muscle. The more it's used, the stronger it becomes. Neurological pathways are created through experiences, and when we practice mindfulness, we're creating more pathways, which makes it an easier path to travel. We also become more empathetic when we practice mindfulness because we're more focused on the moment and not so distracted by outside factors, which allows us to truly be there for people. When we focus on our bodies and breathing, we can cause a biological response that actually slows down and reduces the creation of the stress hormone cortisol. And it's allowing us to be less stressed when that happens. When we are more present and aware, we are able to be more open to others, which enhances relationships, allows us to be more accepting of others. When we're more accepting of ourselves, we can also then be more accepting to others. Finally, when we're more connected socially, we find that we are able to be more connected socially when we are relaxed, open, accepting of new relationships. It just kind of opens us up. And again, making us in that moment so we aren't so consumed with the past or so consumed with worry of the what ifs of the future. So I just want to say thank you very much for taking time, and this is obviously important to you since you're spending the time watching this and being a part of what we're talking about, and just knowing that it's a practice. So keep doing anything that you can do. Breathing is a huge part of what we do. There are so many different breathing techniques that you can take to your kids for mindfulness. We have a brain break that's going to walk you through one after that. It's called 525. We have different breaks that you can do with your body where you put your hand on your heart. I do this one with my kids sometimes. It's called hand over heart. And as you're doing this, you're just taking in deep breaths and you're thinking about somebody who is close to you, who is meaningful to you. Sometimes that's hard for kids if they're feeling like there is no one there for them. So just allowing that time for them to kind of feel that. It's a natural physiological response to our body when we get stressed or anything. If you ever find yourself kind of just like going this way, it's because we're going to our heart. We're trying to find our lifeline and what calms us, what brings us back to where we are. So if you've ever found that like, oh, I'm so stressed, and you're kind of just rubbing chest, rubbing your neck, that's back to your heart. And that is our breath and our heart, our lifelines. And that's what keeps us moving forward, keeping us grounded, keeping us healthy. So I have the opportunity to have an interview with Christy Curtis, who is from the Orange County Department of Ed. And she's doing some great work with mindfulness and mindful moving and that sort of thing. So I would like to take you to a discussion that I had with her. So thank you very much for being here. Now that you have some understanding about what mindfulness is, I'd like to introduce you to Christy Curtis of Orange County Department of Ed. And Christy is a program specialist. And I'm going to actually just let you kind of tell us what your job is and what you do.
Thank you so much, Chris, for just this opportunity to share. Mindfulness kind of in the trenches for the educators in the field. And what I'm doing currently this year at Orange County Department of Ed is, as you mentioned, a program specialist, specifically in mindful moving. And this is where we are, I was hired on with my expertise in physical education. I've been an educator for 18 years in this, and coupling that with the trainings I've also had in mindfulness and yoga, and bringing that full circle into a curriculum that kind of pairs motor-based movement concepts in physical education land. Simple example, extending the arms, from either running or again, using the body, and bringing that into awareness with key mindfulness practices, and also yoga practices, and most importantly with SEL competencies, kind of all intertwined. So we're pulling from a lot of different strings to create at least a product for educators to be able to use in the classroom, specifically not just in physical ed, but also K-12 to kind of implement throughout to help them support better their curriculum and use of mindfulness tools.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And can you tell me, why do you think in general mindfulness is just so important for each of us in our daily life?
Think about it. I mean, how often are we pulled in so many different directions? It's the daily, it's just what we've become now conditioned to. And so oftentimes with mindfulness is we are aware, it's present moment awareness. And oftentimes our bodies are here, but our minds aren't caught up to it. I like to use it as the example of, you're here, you got off your flight, but your baggage is delayed, or your baggage got ahead on a different flight. And so that's kind of where our minds are always going, being pulled in different directions. And so it's hard when we're not physically present. How are we expected to pay attention? How can we have a connection? How do we know what's going on in our bodies and within our own emotions or interactions with others? So because our attention's pulled in so many different ways, we're left very fragmented and with a severed nervous system that allows us to try to quasi-operate on high to low grade anxiety, or just coasting through life in this autopilot mode. And in the end, that's all going to end up affecting our health and our overall state of being, and the connection that we can make, and especially the impact we have as educators with our students. And lastly, why it's so important for us in our daily lives is because mindfulness, it's a skill. It's a tool that we can cultivate and grow and adapt to everything that we do in life. And there's multiple ways to do it. So that's why I think that there's a way to kind of train this brain, if you will. And once we understand kind of how it works.
I think that's so very true. And I think a lot of times too, with ourselves and with kids, we're like, okay, just sit down, calm down, focus, but we never teach them what that actually is. And so that's why this is so powerful. It's just our mind is an incredible mechanism that when given the right opportunity, we can really focus in on what we need to focus in on. And that connection between our mind and body, being a biomed teacher is unbelievable. Like, we can cause physical pain and problems in our body from our stress and our thoughts and all of that. So being able to control it is so very important.
Absolutely.
What are some of your favorite or your easiest tools that teachers can use for themselves? Let's do it.
And I love this question, and especially the word easy, because we just want, what's my quick hitter? Can I take a pill for this? Or can I take, smell some aromatherapy, and yes, that's a way to offset it. But ultimately, and this is where there's no mindfulness, the concept is easy. Yeah, pay attention, but doing the application is challenging. And so this is why I really, when I teach it, it's a training, it's a practice, it's something we come back to. But especially as educators and just for people in general, is to know that this is accessible. We don't have to go anywhere. It's something we have in us. And I always like to have people start with the breath. Just, am I breathing right now? Like just a self check. We have bumper stickers that remind us, take a breath, breathe, coffee mugs, but it's already happening. And the moment that we can start to transfer the attention to just one thing, having an anchor is what we use it in mindfulness training, whether that be a sensation in the body or using our senses. So something that allows you to stay focused. And for me as an individual, for what lands well with me is finding the breath. But then it's something that's real approachable. Pay attention to one thing that you do every single day. Brushing your teeth. Notice, am I holding my toothbrush in my left hand or my right? Or am I brushing on the right side of my mouth, the left? Did I put my hand on the toothpaste? I mean, it's breaking it down, but with that, not in a sense of boredom, but in a sense of, isn't this interesting? Oh, this is curious that I decided to do it this way today. But we're focusing on one thing that we're doing, repetitive, but naming it, knowing when the mind veers off to the daily to-do list. But I have this ability to notice my mind went away. Okay, that's obviously an important thought, but I'm going to choose to bring it back to one thing that I'm doing right here and now. So those would be some of the things: finding breath, whether that be, before you get out of the car and step into the staff parking lot or before you come home, but finding one thing, and it does not have to be complicated. Walking, eating, like I said, brushing teeth, children telling your own kids their own bedtime stories. I mean, it's those simple things that we do that hopefully can have a deeper ingrained aspect to it. So
I love that. So very powerful and true. How about for students? What is something that a teacher who is wanting to start some kind of mindfulness practice with their students?
as teachers, the number one thing I would advise any educator is to model the behavior. We're the model. And I get it. I mean, I teach physical education and yoga day in and day out. So I've got from tennis balls flying around to kids hitting each other with sticks to, I mean, it runs a gamut. And there have been times this rage, and then it's like, okay, because I know what that feels like. And I think for educators, we get stressed. Our students are stressed. But the moment that we have this ability to check in with ourselves and those stress meters and our reactions, to be able to model a better response with our tone of voice, making the eye contact, having more of a mindful, maybe a softer movement and approach versus the abrupt, showing that. So again, it's a choice that we have, but modeling the behavior would be number one. For any classroom teacher, I would advise creating some kind of environment and a set routine for mindfulness. And instead of just being, okay, hey, we have a Spanish test, everyone, here's our mindful breathing, our stress reduction. Why don't we do it every day? Why not dedicate, 10 breaths before, as soon as we sit down, or dim the lights. Or maybe there is, some nature music that the teacher plays before class or at the end of class for that transition time. So I think that those are some things that are accessible. They don't cost us anything. And then also, depending on the grade level, kids, I oftentimes don't always give them the credit they deserve, but they're smart. They're much more intuitive. Like, they know. And the beautiful thing about mindfulness is it's very empowering. When they can, one, know how the brain works. Oh, this is what's happening. This is why I'm feeling like I need to protect myself, because this part of my brain is going bonkers. But oh gosh, I don't get to access this part of my brain because this guy's going crazy pants. Oh, well, I'm aware of that now. Well, okay, now I can kind of walk myself through this. So giving them those tools of understanding of how much not to use the word control, but attention they can give themselves. And when they, again, knowledge is power. Look at what we do to help our kids. And when they can know how their bodies and their minds work, it's another incentive. Well, how is this going to help me? Well, how many of you are stressed out? Look at what's happening in schools. How many of you are, getting bullied and we have no idea what they come to school with. Going into just the social, emotional health situations, from the suicide, and just let alone what's happening on social media that automatically impacts them. So, and this is transitioning into the last thing, is it's just relating. letting them know they're not alone. Like, you as an adult, you get it. And however we can find a language that segues in, maybe it be, hey, you know how focused you are on that video game that you love playing? Maybe we can use that same kind of focus on this, study skills guide, or when you're, talking with the partner next to you. So those are just some things, again, just creating that buy-in, modeling the behavior, and setting up the routine is our real, I think, accessible ways to kind of seep this in, backdoor style, so it's not blatant in their face, because it's a kind of a, what is going on? It's new, but with the amount of awareness and attention it's getting because of the research-based evidence, um, and when they feel it, because it's a felt experience. And that's a real special thing when the students get to be like, oh, this is calm, kind of. But it doesn't have to be calm all the time. And giving them that too. It's not always calm and happy. No way is it. That's, yeah.
And so letting them know that that's okay.
Yes.
That that's okay too.
Yes.
To help them get through those times.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
any last thoughts you'd like to share with us on mindfulness? You have given us so much great information already.
Oh, no, thanks. It's such a, for me, it's something that's changed my life personally as an educator. I'll be honest, 18 years in this, and I've, there's been a long, there's been a long burnout. I'm going to own it. And I found mindfulness and yoga at a time of my life where it was just like, oh, I can bring this to kids because they're human beings. And I've witnessed a true just transformation within myself and my teaching, and um, letting things go and not get so angry, and my health, and a lot of things have shifted when I made this choice. So, in closing, it's a practice, and it's not something we want to force upon anybody or ourselves. But if we can remain, I think, a little bit more open, and remember that, this is something that it doesn't have to be a formal punishment corner of silence. Yes, a formal sit, having a routine every day. Yes, research shows this is wonderful. It works. It works. But it doesn't have to be that way. Getting outside, getting some exercise, being in nature. So what are some things that we enjoy that make us, again, feel like we're human beings? Because we can get beaten down greatly. And lastly, it's, as an educator, we're so, okay, here's the A grade. This is the right way to do it. Here's the rubric. With mindfulness, it takes on a whole other life form because it's not linear. There is no right way. We have no idea what another person's felt experience is. And that's where it gets to be, it's a personal practice for them. And, but specifically in terms of, we're strengthening this muscle of a capacity to deal with a spectrum of emotions and circumstances that are beyond our control. And whatever we can find as a way to land and, download some apps, free apps all over the place. Insight Timer, Stop, Breathe, Think. Smiling Mind is great for teens. It's UK. It's based out of the UK and Australia, so it has a cool accent to it, and the kids love it. But those are just great ways. Find a mindfulness training. I also do that stuff, separate from OCD, but getting involved and creating the big thing is creating a community amongst fellow teachers. And that's where the power lies, because we can do all this stuff online and listen and read books and do apps. But until we start to talk about it with others, that's where it starts to seep, and that creates a different type of culture. And once teachers are doing it, it'd be great, sure, if principals are doing it and secretaries are doing it and janitors are doing it, it becomes this is a new way, a way that creates more kindness in this field that can be really brutal, to all of us involved. And we have to return to our human nature and knowing that there is that goodness in all of us. And it's just, then mindfulness helps us kind of peel it back one messy layer at a time. And it's, but like I said, it's a skill, and just being patient, and yeah, and just staying really, really curious with it. Because, as I'm sure you've discussed in the previous, is, mindfulness, it's paying attention to the present moment. Not all moments are going to be happy and pleasant, but there's a way to sit and trust yourself enough. It's going to pass. And so hopefully that, I know it kind of gave you a lot to digest, but I think in the end, however anyone can make it their own, because there's no right way.
I have to tell you, you have just articulated exactly what I tell to people what I live, what I feel, all of those things are so true. And just
Mm.
remembering to be kind to ourselves in
Yes.
this process, remembering that our kids are humans and they have the same emotions and they have the same wants and needs, and assuming good in everyone. That's kind of what we look for. So it's, yeah, so
Yeah.
thank you so much. I
You're
really,
so welcome.
and also I know you have a training that's
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, this is what we're so excited about. So we rolled out our first short curriculum last month called Mindful Moving to physical educators, just bringing introductory practices of mindful moving to everyday physical education classrooms. And the second layer is a little bit more in depth. Some of it can even be used as brain breaks for classroom teachers, getting your kids up and stretching and taking them outside and having them feel what it's like to be in their bodies. But what's special about the mindful moving is that it aligns with social emotional learning competencies. So students are in their bodies doing like a movement skill of like a yoga like pose, that we've kind of adopted and made a little bit different, um, but are developing the skill of self-awareness, of knowing, okay, I'm here, shaped maybe as a tree, but I'm paying attention. I have a particular focus of, oh, this is what to feel supported is like, or gosh, this is what it's like to be off balance. Where else am I off balance in my life? And so it's connecting these other dots for them, for students to be able to experience, to develop that, again, fuller capacity of the of how, as teachers we're saying, well, hey, teach compassion, teach empathy. All right, well, how do I do that? And it's great to say, but again, until it can land and we experience it, it's a different connection. So that's what the training is going to involve, is these mindful moving concepts that cater to SEL competencies, social emotional learnings. And the bonus is that educators get to experience another layer of self-care for themselves, because every time we teach this, it's just not for the kids. It's for us too. And simple tools, finding the breath, and creating more. I think our wonderful feedback that we got from our last group was just, can I have more accessible tools? And so there'll be a large portion dedicated to, just kind of this mindfulness 101. This is what's happening, and you can take this and it's in snippets, little seeds, just plant them. So we're really excited. It'll be now March 21st. All the information is at Orange County Department of Ed. You can feel free to email me for a flyer, and I'll be more than happy to share that out. So.
well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time and sharing your amazing wealth of information with us. So thank you.
No, thank you. And your district is so fortunate to have this growing. I hope that what your movement can be carried forward to all schools. So much gratitude to the work that you guys are doing, blazing the field, because it's a challenge. It really is. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity, Chris, and the work that you're doing in there too. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope you
Absolutely.
have the rest of your week. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. All right. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today in listening and sharing a part of our mindfulness, being aware and present in our daily lives summit session. I hope you enjoyed your time with us and the conversation with Christy Curtis from Orange County Department of Ed, and all of the valuable, insightful information she shared with us. Also, if there's ever anything that you need, any additional resources, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is available to you at the beginning of the summit. Um, Also, additionally, there are some resources linked for you, some articles, some things that you can take with you to kind of try and see what you can do, not only for your students, but for yourself as well. And we also have differentiated by grade level that you can click on below, whether elementary, middle, high, or feel free to visit all three. We'd love for you to stop in and take a look. So thank you again for being here and spending some time with us, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you.